I'm not gonna be able to go to college. Well, why can't I go to college, you might ask? Is it because of money? Is it because of grades? No, it's because my parents are making me stay behind so I can be the babysitter for my sibling while they run off and just do nothing more but party. So I tell Grandpa.
I'm in my early 20s and unable to take the issue that's currently going on in my life. This is why I've decided to make a decision that would favor me. All my years growing up and living with my parents, I've practically had to do things myself. From picking up after myself and tending to my younger brother, I was always just left alone to do these things myself, and my parents tried to help once in a while, but it was obvious that they had an attitude of negligence. Not that they were wrong for me to learn, but every child needs a parent, someone who would be available, and I very much needed to enjoy my childhood. I should be allowed to be a simple child, and I should not be rushed into adulthood and responsibilities like that. Anyways, my parents are not what you can refer to as available parents. For most parts of my life, they've been away. Well, where do they go, you may ask? It's the same question I've asked myself over the years. Where did they constantly go, and why was it so difficult to have them at home with us? Even if it was my brother, little Joe's sake, I just knew my parents didn't have marital issues, and no one was cheating on the other. They always went out and came home together looking tired but satisfied. But there was never a conversation on infidelity, and I took that as them just being okay. I thought that my life was bad enough until I started high school, and my parents were still not available for me. In the actual sense, they were away for more time than they were available. I was mostly left to feed Joe, and sometimes a maid come to prepare some food for us. On days when my parents decided to go on unannounced trips, I started to lack basic things like school notes and textbooks, and my mom and dad were not around for me to inform them. I would go days without having the required books, and it continued that way. Do you know what my dilemma was? Every time my parents came back from their trips, they brought back several bags of clothing, bags of shoes. I was not so little to recognize all the designer boxes that came with my mom and how she had so many clothes already, and there was hardly any room left in her closet. My dad came back with all kinds of Nikes, Balenciaga, Louis Vuitton. Different designer brands were everywhere in our house, yet I needed access to school books for $10? I was young, but my heart ached, and I desperately wanted to tell them that what they were doing was all wrong, but I could not. I was the child and ultimately the younger person. Miss Tina, our part-time maid, must have realized that what my parents were doing was wrong, but she said nothing. Who could blame her? Hers was to simply come on the day she was needed, get paid, and leave for her house. She did not concern herself with us on days when she was not going to get paid, and it was not her fault. You can imagine how hard it was for me growing up. To need things and not be able to speak up because either my parents were not around to hear me out or they were too tired from partying when they were around. Well, one particular time a party was held in our home. I don't know where the crowd came from, but there were so many people that day, loud music filled the room. Joe and I remained in our rooms for the entire day, and we started to get hungry. When Joe began to cry from hunger, I kept on giving him water. It was not until later in the night that the noise died down and everyone left the house. Our house reeked of alcohol, and there were so many bottles in our living room. Everywhere smelled of vomit, and until the maid came, it remained that way. Okay, here's my dilemma. I've finished high school, and I'm ready to go to college, because I knew how rough my growing up was and how my parents were not so available for me. I decided to have a conversation with them about college, and would you not believe what I'm faced with? My parents decided that I could not go to college, not immediately because they need my help to babysit my 10-year-old younger brother Joe whenever they intend to go on trips. Simply because they can no longer afford to pay Miss Tina for the time she spent with us whenever they were not around. As you would know, this made me so mad. My parents had tampered with my life to the point, and I did not want even me to go to college, along with my colleagues, all because of their recklessness and lack of care. What was I to do? I mean, I had a career ahead of me. I had a life. My dream is to become a well-known journalist, but going by what my parents were doing, it would end up being a dream too far to reach. Despite how much displeasure I showed concerning the idea, the day I was to resume college was the day that my parents decided to go on their stupid, little, lavish trip. My mom smiled at Joe and told him, "Oh, your sister's here. She'll take care of you." And they left without even looking back and asking me how I was going to go to school. I felt my blood boil in anger, and I knew that if I did not do something, I would become the official nanny and sacrifice my dreams for, well, of a better life. Now, I've been left here, and if I left Joe, he would not be fine by himself. I'm stuck, and I don't know what to do. How exactly do I get out of this? What's up, everybody? Mr. Redito here. Today's story is about to take a turn. We're going to jump into two of the hottest comments on the original post before we jump into the updates. And guys, if you're into these sort of stories, the best way to hear them every day is by hitting that subscribe button. It does support the channel, and I appreciate it. Here is the top comments. Comment number 1. This is not the type of story you should bring to the public. Whatever happened to resolving family issues within the family, and you choose to bring your family out here asking for the opinions of people who don't know crap about parenting. In case you've not been told, parenting's hard. So young lady, get a grip of yourself, stop bringing family matters to the public eye. Parents deserve a break too. Comment number 2. You're a very brave girl, and you should keep up this attitude. Speaking up for yourself is not wrong no matter who it is that's mistreating you, and you must know that. What your parents are doing is wrong, and I suggest that the best person to talk to would be an immediate member of your family, who can help resolve the issue. Don't let anyone shut you up, alright? Keep at it, and we expect to hear more. Update number 1. Well guys, I guess I got lucky. Grandpa Tuck, who is my mom's dad, decides to visit us the same day that my parents left me at home to babysit little Joe. Where are you? Your parents, your dad, your mom? Obviously surprised to see that it was just us left by ourselves to fend the home. I told him that we're alone, they're not around. He seemed surprised, and I decided to take the advantage to tell Grandpa all that's been going on. Maybe he would be able to talk some sense into his daughter. I tell him about the parties, how most of the time I'm left to fend for little Joe and we're left hungry and not attended to. Yes, I was grown up and ready for college, but so many unpleasant things have happened before then, and I decided not to hold anything back. I was going to say it all from the beginning. I'll even tell him about those 4 days I survived on 2 packs of ramen noodles. Well, I told him about the struggle I had with getting my high school books. That's where I started, with my parents always insisting that they had no money and me having to constantly coerce them to buy the books I need. And also the fact that I missed a lot of things at school because I did not have all the required books. Well, that's not all. I took him to my mom and dad's room and showed him their closet, which could barely close because of the amount of clothing and shoes that were stuffed inside of it. He saw all the designer bags, boxes, including those who, the ones not yet opened, and were stacked on top of one another in the corner of the room. This is unbelievable! Is this what Tessa does with my money? I could see that he was furious, old Grandpa, and I was happy to see it. Someone would finally see some sense and talk to them, and it would not be little old me. I told him about the time when we were left by ourselves and Joe got very sick. Miss Tina had come that morning and make us some breakfast and left. She only came for the number of hours she was paid to stay, and Joe got sick and starts to vomit, and I had to self-diagnose. I gave him some drugs. I did not know what I was doing, but that day I cried so much and prayed that nothing would happen to my brother. I was only a young girl, but my parents decided to leave the responsibility of an adult to me, while going about their lavish lifestyle, leaving me with 2 packets of ramen noodles. Ugh, at least it was the chicken-flavored ones. And now I could not resume college with my friends because my parents had gone on another trip, and I was left to babysit Joe. Grandpa pulled me aside, and Joe as well, and told us that it's all right because he was going to stay with us and would not leave until my parents got back, and he straightened things up with them. I was glad because honestly, you know what that meant? My parents could expect a surprise at the lifetime because they were not aware Grandpa would be visiting. He had thought to surprise them, and oh boy, surprise it was. Grandpa decided we should make ourselves something to eat while we await the return, and there's a part of me that feels like I should probably not have told Grandpa about it. I hope I would not cause a major stir. But then there is the other part of me that believes that what I have done was the right thing to do, and if I don't speak up, it'll continue that way and things would get really bad. I would not be able to go to college like everyone else, and my dreams would probably suffer. Whatever the case, they will soon be back, and I guess they're going to meet the surprise that awaits them. Update number 2. I know that a lot of people are saying that I should not have put my parents out like that, the way I did to my grandpa. Someone even said that what I did by telling my grandpa all about my parents would make them begin to distrust me. Well, weren't they thinking about trust when they left me to babysit on the day I should have gone to college? Let me also make it clear that my grandpa's one of the smartest person I've ever known. Telling him not to snitch on my parents or break their trust in me, I only believe that, well, he has what it takes to talk to them and get me out of the situation I'm currently in. He's my only hope. You see, maybe some people don't understand what I mean when I say that my parents don't know when to stop spending, and they have a habit of lavishing money on things that are not important while neglecting the stuff that is. Let me share one experience with you. I remember one time, for some reason, I followed my mom to the mall to get some things. Well, you could call me the lucky day, because she suddenly decides that we would go to the mall together, and she would also get me a few things. We went that day, and like the happy child I was, I picked out everything I needed, threw it into the shopping cart with all the joy in the world. When I was satisfied that I had all I needed, I walked behind my mom, who was pushing 2 big carts in front of her to the cashier. Guess what happened? After paying for everything in both her carts, and it was my turn to get the things from the cart, my mom's cart bounced. Yeah, you heard that. The cashier said that there's not enough money to foot the bill, and I stood there like an idiot, waiting for my mom to sort out the situation. She kept saying, "Oh, that's not possible. There's money in the account." But the cashier's telling us that's not true, and we need to, excuse them. I'd never been so angry and embarrassed in my life. I half expected my mom to return some of the things that she had bought, since they were not as needed as mine, and she already had a ton of bags and shoes. But she looked at me and told me that she had spent all she had and had to wait for more money to come in. So you can imagine that she had spent so much that she was not keeping track of what she spent, and did not know when she ran out of funds for that particular account. And that was it. There's no attempt to get me to even get a little bit of the things I needed, and I just walked out of the store feeling like I should have been born into another family. As my mom loaded up the vehicle with yet another round of vanities. So, you see, if I told my grandpa about what had been going on, it's because I had given it some very important forethoughts, and I know that speaking out would have been the best option, especially for me and Joe, who seemed to be suffering in this case. So, Mom, Dad, they come back like nothing happened, and they were very surprised to see Grandpa at home waiting. Joe was excited to see Mom, who could blame the little baby. I mean, he's not seen his mother in days. Mom asked her dad what he was doing with us, and he simply said, "Well, I came to say hello, and that he's really missing her and missing his grandchildren too." Well, newsflash, that was part of the plan all along. Grandpa decides to pretend like he did not know anything about what's been going on, and he was simply in the house to spend some time with us. So as usual, they come back with different boxes of clothing, wristwatches, bags, shoes that they've brought from their trip. Grandpa even teased them that it looked like they wanted to start a fashion business, and Mom laughed and said, "You know me, Dad. I love fashion." While she was upstairs, something funny happened that evening. There was a knock at the door. Grandpa decided to answer it. He opened the door, and there stood a delivery man. "Miss Tessa?" Delivery man said, and Grandpa called out loud for my mom to come sign for her package and pay for it. Mom comes downstairs, escorted by father, of course, and they look like they've been up to something upstairs that I did not even want to think about. Ugh. Auntie's mom squealed when she saw the delivery man with the package and brought out her card to pay. Well, guess what? Yep, you guessed it, the card bounced again, and it was announced to her that she had insufficient funds. Insufficient funds? She looked from the delivery man to my dad, who stood slightly a distance from her, and to Grandpa, who was seated beside me on the couch watching. What do you mean insufficient? She asked the delivery man. I don't understand you. The delivery man showed her the machine and explained to her that there's not enough money for her to make the purchase. It was not possible for her to grasp it, I guess. Dad, do you think something's wrong? She asked my grandpa, who in turn told her that he did not think so, and she could check with her accountant later the day, when the delivery man announced again that his time was being wasted and he wanted to leave. My mom turned to my dad and asked him to pay for her. Pay? How can I pay when I have no money? It's your card that we use, and you know it. Mom turned his attention away from Dad and looked at the delivery man. Then she just sighed, and that was when Grandpa offered to pay. Mom jumped in, out of joy, and grabbed the package from the man so she could sign. And she never said thank you. Grandpa paid for it, and Mom smiled at him as she followed Dad upstairs, probably to continue what they were doing. Grandpa smiled at her, and if only she knew what was coming for her. I can't wait to see the look on her face when they find out. Update number 3. So, in case you guys have not caught on to my story thus far, my grandpa, Tuck, who is my mom's dad, happens to be a wealthy man. But he was not just wealthy, he was hardworking and very well informed. He knew about finance as well, and that's been the secret of his continual wealth. When my mom and dad got married, my grandpa, he offered them his second house at the time. That's the house that we currently live in, and he told me that my dad had not come up well when it came to finances, and he saw that my dad was a promising young man, so decided to give them both a chance. They moved into the house and started their life together as husband and wife. After some months of being married, my dad could still not come around to figure things like feeding and paying the bills out, so Mom ran to her father for help. Being the daddy's girl that she always was, and the fact that my grandpa could not bear to see any of his children suffering, he decides to help them out. Grandpa connected his account to my mom's account and automatically sent money to the account on a monthly basis. He advised her that with the money, she could sort out some of the bills in the house, cater for us the children, and still save up some, to begin a business. My mom was elated at the news, and that was the beginning of her living the extravagant lifestyle that she had always dreamt of with my father. She went to clubs with my dad, bought different kind of expensive things, and used the money the way that she wanted to, since she now had a monthly supply. She did not think of starting a business or a brand that could sustain her, and my grandpa was oblivious to this since they were not living together. This habit continued until they had us, their children, and there was no appropriate way to take care of us. Well, I'm here to tell you that the bounce check at the supermarket some months ago and the delivery issues were all Grandpa's doings. Grandpa told me that he had begun to suspect my mom when he did not hear from her for so long, and she did not send a report of when her supposed business was to start, even though he asked for it for so long. He decided to stop sending money to her, but changed his mind again and resumed, and all that time I told him was his cue to totally disconnect her account from his. So he deactivated it, and that was how she was unable to pay for her delivery, and he offered to pay. When Grandpa learned that they've been gambling, because that would also explain why the money got finished so quickly, he prepared for a grand plan for them, which obviously he said in due time. They are going to find out. Honestly, I have never been so happy. Telling Grandpa about what my parents have been doing was the best decision for my family. I cannot wait to tell you what unfolds next. Update number 4. Hey guys, my parents still lived on without suspecting a thing, and they continued to spend like nothing happened. My mom had called her accountant to ask if he knew what had happened to her account, and he simply said that he did not know. Well, Grandpa called him beforehand to tell him of his plan, so that he would also play along in teaching my parents a very important lesson. Mom kept buying things, and Dad kept gambling with the little money they had left, and I was aware of Grandpa's grand plan. He had decided that the icing on the cake would be to demand for the house. They were ungrateful and bad managers of resources, and they needed to learn that there was more to life than buying so many things that were not necessarily needed. Grandpa called his lawyer and withdrew Mom's access to his assets and all properties, including the ones that he willed to her. He got his lawyer to redo his will and excluded her name from the inheritance, and she was not worth all that hard work that he's put in over the years, and would not manage his wealth well. The last thing that he did was to get the house papers, which were still in his name, and though he knew that his daughter would mishandle things, his initial plan had been for them to stay in the house, till they were just able to get theirs, and so he had left the papers in his name, since he did intend to take the house back eventually. My parents did not know about Grandpa's plan and did not catch on about anything. They simply continued to live their lives, and Grandpa made himself comfortable in our home, saying that he was there to spend quality time with his grandkids. Speaking of me and Joe, they kept living flamboyantly, but there was one thing Grandpa was waiting for before revealing all his actions and plans to them. He was waiting for when the last money in the account would finally dry up. I asked how he would know that, and he said he would know. That we would all know. When things totally go to a standstill and nothing works anymore, then that's when our cue would. The last dollar had been spent. It did not take long before we found out. Mom announced one day that she was going to the mall to get some minor things, and Grandpa suggested that we all go as a family and shop. My mom said that Grandpa was too old for the mall, but he insisted that he was fit enough, and besides he could watch us while my parents went around buying everything they desired. So we all hopped in the car and went to the mall. Joe and I went with Grandpa, shopping for the things we needed. I needed some things for college, and unlike that previous experience where I pushed my shopping cart to the cashier and eventually got nothing home, this time it was different. Grandpa paid for everything in my cart and even got me some extra things and several things for Joe as well. Now, here's where the drama unfolds. My mom had dragged 2 full carts to the cashier as usual and brought out her card for payment. The cashier did a double take and announced that her funds were, insufficient, and she could not pay for the things that she's bought. What? That's impossible. Check again. She shook her head, and Grandpa and I exchanged a knowing smile. We knew that it was possible, and it was happening right now. The cashier checked again, and it was still the same thing. My mom's been holding, onto a bag that she picked from the cart and kept admiring it. The cashier collected the bag and told Mom to excuse her so she could attend to the next customer. Mom was upset and would not leave and kept telling the cashier to try again, that their machine is faulty. Well, the cashier did not have enough patience like the previous time and told my mom that he's going to call security on her if she did not leave that instant. Mom looked at Grandpa, begging with her eyes that he would pay for her, but Grandpa shook his head, saying that he had spent all that he's brought to the mall with him. While Mom was still speaking, a security man came and ordered her out with nothing. It was embarrassing for her, but I've never been so happy that she was finally starting to learn a lesson. Update number 5. So, we get home that evening, and it felt like someone had died with how quiet the house was. The usual music jam was not going to happen because Mom was sad that she could not get those things from the mall. Well, not for me and Joe. We had everything we needed, and we were so happy. Mom threw herself on the couch, and the instant we got inside the house and frantically searched for her accountant's number while attempting to wipe the tears that had begun to fall from her cheeks. When she saw that he was unreachable, she threw her phone on the couch and stormed upstairs. She said nothing to Dad or Grandpa because they had both insisted that they did not have any money to help her with the current shopping dilemma she was facing. Well, when she gets upstairs, we heard a scream. Ah! Now, So she ran downstairs with her hands covering her mouth, and when Dad asked her what the heck her problem was, she turned to him to say that the water in the house had stopped running. Well, that surprised me too. Surely in all their spending, they have not forgotten to pay the power and water bill for the month. Well, turns out I was wrong. My parents, amidst everything they were spending and buying, had not just forgotten to pay for the water bill, but also the power bill as well. And at this point, I was angry with them. How were we supposed to survive in a house without electricity or water? Sure, I was going to college, but what about Joe? So Mom picks up her phone and puts a call through to her friend Fiona. She put the phone on speaker and paced the room in absolute distress, and Fiona picked up the call, and Mom asked if she could borrow money from her. Fiona said she did not have it and would not be able to help, and my mom went on to call one friend after the other, and they all turned her down, and this made me wonder what kind of friends they were if the only thing they knew how to do was come to our house during parties and eat all the food that they wanted. So much for good friends. Well, Mom could not get anyone to give her some money, and she sank into the couch, her head in her hand, sobbing, and Dad could only watch her as he did not know what to say and had no money to give her either. It was at this point that Grandpa cleared his throat and told Mom that she no longer had access to the monthly allowance from him. She was shocked and started to weep, asking him why he would think of doing such a thing to her, and Grandpa explained that Mom and Dad were ungrateful people who did not know how to handle money and what to use it for effectively. He was upset that despite the many luxuries and opportunities they had in life, they misused them and could not even show us the kids' love and care. He then brought out the house papers and showed them, and he told them that he was taking his house back and they could go live on the streets if they wanted to. Mom cried and held his clothing and just begged them to forgive her, and Dad joined in asking for forgiveness too. So Grandpa busted out an agreement form and told them the only reason they would still have the house in the meantime was because of me and Joe, and that's it. And he also said that the only money that they would have access to from him would be for me and Joe's absolute needs, which must be spent on me and my brother. They were to go look for jobs and in 6 months vacate the house so that Grandpa could use it for what he wanted to use it to do. If they failed to comply with the terms, the house would be taken away from them, and they would also lose access to us, their kids. I watched on as Grandpa read the agreement and told them right now to sign it. It was now known it was not the best agreement, and Mom and Dad, well, they both had absolute tears in their eyes. But they signed it. I was finally able to have the last laugh, and someone needed to teach these two a lesson. I would finally get to go to college in peace, and Joe would be well taken care of. Thank you all for listening. And yes, being able to share my story here has helped me remain strong through my entire journey. And not just for me, but for Joe as well. Anyways, thank you guys so much. Top comments from the final post. What a brave girl you are to have decided to take on the responsibility to expose your parents to your grandpa. I just want you to know that I'm very proud of you, and I cannot wait to see the young woman of integrity that you'll grow into. Joe is so blessed to have such a sister who looks after him, and I grew up in a family where, for most of my life and that of my siblings, I've been the one to stand for them and demand that they should be taken care of. Even when the adults thought it was, well, not necessary, I learned to speak up, and that's what you have done. I'm so proud of you, and now your parents will learn that you deserve to be treated with love and the utmost respect. Love ya. Comment number 2. I've said again and again that the people of this age have no boundaries and don't know when to stop. No one told you to tell your grandpa, and now you're going to make snitching look like it's okay for kids. You read a story of how a grandfather conspired with a grandchild to embarrass and disgrace the parents, and everyone thinks it's fine? No, it's not okay. And this story does not in any way show family loyalty. Let us all get some sense.
I don't know, OP's mother in today's story just seems so off to me. She didn't find it weird that Grandpa was paying for everything, and then all of a sudden the card stops working numerous times and she acts all, "Oh, I don't know what's going on." Have you never thought that maybe Grandpa's cutting you off? I don't know, I want to know your thoughts about this. Let's say, for instance, you were OP and your parents were doing this, causing you to potentially mess up your entire life dream of being a journalist and going to college. How do you react? How do you respond? Drop it down in the comment section. Let's talk about this story. It was a crazy one. My name's Mr. Reddito, and I narrate these stories every day, so if you want to be a part of these daily readings, make sure you subscribe. I'll see you guys tomorrow, and please remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya.